Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I'm your host, John Espinosa. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and listening in. As always, if you like what you're hearing, please click on that subscribe button. Share with your friends and family. It helps us ultimately meet our mission of getting others to where they're going. Today is a topic that I'm going to discuss, and it was sent in actually by one of our listeners. So I do read those comments. I do listen, read my emails. It's not a bot. It is me. And one of the questions that they had was, and it was really a scenario, and it was leaders telling the truth. That was the title of the email or the thread that I got. And the scenario centered around an employee at an organization who was almost led on to believe that they were going to get a promotion. And this was done by the leader of that organization. And it ended up being where the leader knew that they weren't going to get the promotion. Later on down the line, whenever the promotional opportunity came up, a series of events happened and that individual became pretty angry after he didn't get the promotion and then was told basically that there was no chance that he was going to get it the whole time. So from a leadership standpoint, how do we deal with that as frontline leaders? I would equate that situation to a relationship with a significant other. And you're in that relationship and you're leading that other individual on. You really don't have any interest long term, but that individual does. The other person that you're in the relationship with, they do. They don't have any doubt that you haven't expressed or actually been honest or told them the truth that you don't see this as a long-time relationship. And I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but it is not a good situation. Both sides, the other individual believes that, everything's fine, and then one individual doesn't either want to, and I'm not saying it's malicious in nature, the other person, it may be that they don't want to hurt their feelings, or it may be they don't want to be alone. I mean, a lot of times people don't want to be alone. However, the moral of the story is you as a leader need to be able to have those conversations, those tough conversations. That is a lot of what, as a leader, you deal with. And if you've been a leader for quite some time, if you are a young leader listening to this podcast, learn how to have a crucial conversation. There's a reason why you see a lot of training around conflict management and having that crucial conversation, because a lot of what we deal with as frontline leaders is we got to get our hands dirty sometimes. It's not all glory. It's not all thanking people and being gracious. I talk a lot about that. A lot of what I do is centered around that, but there is also a lot of what I do that you are dealing with conflict. You're dealing with relationship challenges. Either somebody doesn't see eye to eye with another person on your team. And the last thing that we want to do, going back to the question, the example, and I'm going to get into some tips that I have used because I've been in that situation where I've had to have that tough conversation, is the fact that nobody wants to be on a team. Nobody wants to work for an organization that they are thinking one thing, the sky's the limit, and you as a leader know that that is not the case. That's just not a culture that you want to cultivate in any organization, because again, your reputation is based on your relationships and how you deal with people. I promise you the word gets around. I work for a very large organization, but the word will get out that you misled this individual. So let's get into some tricks and really the crux of what we're going to talk about today. So this situation where the employee, they want more, they want a promotional opportunity, maybe it's a raise, quarterly bonus, or a yearly bonus that is normal, just reward or incentivized system within your organization. And you as a leader, it takes me, and this may be a new employee or it may be a seasoned employee that comes to you one day and says, hey, listen, I want to get out of this position. I want to do something different. What can I do? And you may say, well, go do this. and they go do that, and you're just basically pushing them away, pushing them off of your plate. You're not really addressing the root cause that you as a leader may not see them being able or even a position available within your organization that they can go do that work, right? Vice versa, you have a new employee that's coming on. In a lot of organizations, they do have maybe a year probation period, maybe less for some organizations. And if you listen to leaders, they say hire fast and fire faster with new employees. And it sounds very just yucky, right? I mean, for leaders, I love to give people opportunity. I do not like as a leader to take away that opportunity. So how do we do that? How do you, because it's a tough spot. I mean, I battled with it for quite some time. I'll just share that experience with you and we can talk through it. I had an individual on, it was probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that was on an opportunity, detail opportunity with the team that I was leading at that time. And they were great. They were stellar on the application. They interviewed fantastic. Their demeanor was great. They fit into the culture. And so we onboarded them. We onboarded them. We hired them. They came on board. They started going through all the onboarding training and all the process initiation. And everything went well for about 30 to 45 days. It was a normal onboarding process. To me, I really didn't see any differently. But around that 45-day mark, I started to notice a change. I started to notice the individual coming up with maybe some excuses around why they couldn't perform the functions of the job that we had hired them to do. We had a pretty good conversation around that, and I really wasn't honest with myself. I didn't trust my gut. Let's just say that. I didn't trust my intuition to say, there's something going on here, John. We need to peel back some layers. I went in, I didn't like conflict. Nobody likes conflict, but I didn't want to bring up what I thought was going on, which was that this individual didn't see themselves with our organization. He talked around it for another 45 days, and I meet with my team pretty regularly, and it was just a conversation that we talked around. We both felt it. I mean, I look back now, and hindsight's always 20/20. But you look back into those situations, and maybe you've been there. Maybe you're in that situation, but you look back as a leader into those periods where you wish you would have done things differently, and this was one of them. The feeling was of just uneasiness. The individual knew that they didn't want to be there. I knew as a leader that they probably didn't want to be there. So I finally decided this is enough. We got to have the conversation, and we did. And I will tell you the relief on their face, the relief when I said, hey, listen, I don't know if we're a right fit for you. And it was like the weight just was off their shoulders. They said, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. I didn't want to let you down. And that's when it hit me. That's like, as a leader, you're like, whoa, they were in it only because they cared about my feelings. They didn't want to let me down because I afforded them an opportunity, but yet they weren't happy. And I had a really strong feeling that they weren't happy. So that conversation, I always talk about closing the gap. And when you go into those types of conversations and you know that an employee doesn't have maybe the potential to hit the bonuses or doesn't have potential when they come to you and they say, hey, listen, there's a promotion available. I want to go for it. And you say, oh yeah, you're great. You can go for it. Just keep doing what you're doing or keep working, maybe take some extra classes or things. But you know that individual, I mean, if you are a good leader and you're connecting and you got a good relationship established, you know their strengths and weaknesses. Now, I'm not saying as a leader that you put a ceiling on anybody because people will shock you. You start putting ceilings on people and they will break through those ceilings. I'm talking about when you know in your gut, your intuition, that an individual coming to you asking for additional opportunity, either one, they can't handle it because they may be even barely just treading water with their current opportunities, or two, it's going to take some increased skill sets. That individual, maybe you've coached in the past and mentored on, they say they want to change, they say they want the opportunities, but then when, this is a two-way street. As a leader, you got to, one, listen, close that gap of where people are currently and where people want to be. That's what you as a leader need to work with that individual. And if you've done that in the past and they haven't demonstrated the aptitude to close that gap, then it's time to have the hard conversation. So that's where we're at. So when you sit down with that individual, you need to be very specific about why they can't achieve those bonuses or those incentives that you are having. And you also need to be very frank and very upfront and honest and specific again about the tools and the knowledge or the competencies or the skills that they are lacking to achieve what they want to achieve. You got to be honest. You have to be truthful, right, around those types of conversation. And as leaders, we're creating inclusive environments. And if you let that individual think that they're able to do something that you're probably not either going to afford them or they can't do mentally, physically, whatever that may be, that inclusive environment, that's the opposite. Then you're going to have the case where the listener had, where that individual didn't get the promotion. Somebody else maybe got the promotion, and now you have somebody on your team who is disgruntled or maybe angry. And now they're spreading that in the organization when you could have handled it very early on. So be very specific. Ask questions that help you understand where they're coming from. So if they are looking for maybe a opportunity, promotion, or they want to hit a certain level in the company or the team, and they're not getting there, you need to help to understand by asking good questions. What is going on? How can I help? I know you want to get to this point. I know you want to achieve that level. I know you want to incentivize. How can I help you? Because I see that we're a little behind the mark, and that's why it's important in goal setting to make sure that we set milestones. So be very specific and make sure that the goal itself is time bound. 30 days, 60 days to 90 days. I like to work in those 30-day increments and then hold them accountable for not meeting whatever milestone. And that's where you can start getting ahead of some of these conversations to where an employee wants to go somewhere, but they're not putting in the work to get there. And if 60, 90, 120 days go by and they're just not meeting the mark, that's when you need to have that serious conversation. Be specific. Make sure you ask good questions to help understand. Maybe there's something going on in their personal life, but whatever that is, you need to be truthful in your feedback that that individual may not be cut out for whatever opportunity that they want to achieve. And that's just being very open and honest, being authentic, and not leading people on to feel as if they can achieve something that they can't. And that's hard to do. I mean, again, I'm talking through this. The last step we're going to talk through is designing a path forward, mutually designing a path forward. There's not a lot of like black and white situations. We're working in the gray zone here, leaders, and that gray zone can get very squishy sometimes. So you know yourself. You hopefully should know your employees well enough to have these types of conversations. Set the goals, hold each other accountable, and then if that's not occurring, that's when we have these talks, these conversations, these coaching, these mentoring sessions where we're trying to close the gap. Be very specific on what's not being met. Make sure you're asking good questions to understand what's going on. Don't be accusatory. Stay away from those, what are you doing questions. Be very open. Ask, how can I help you? I see that we're not meeting the milestone. Be very inclusive in your language. There's a lot of coaching there that you can do. And then the last one is mutually designing a path forward. So together, after we mutually decide that maybe this opportunity, maybe what we initially set out for that individual is not going to happen. What's the path forward? Is it an opportunity with another organization? They need to go grow their skill set. Maybe you may have to let go of that individual because from an organizational standpoint, once others start picking up the slack, they see that they're working extra hard and that individual maybe isn't holding their weight. So, when we as leaders talk about holding ourselves accountable, that's one piece that we need to be very clear about is clear, concise, and truthful communication to our employees. It's uncomfortable, so getting comfortable with that uncomfortable conversation. There may be a lot of lost pride in that conversation, but that person is going to be better. Again, designing that mutual path forward, either, hey, you need to look at another opportunity. We may not be the right fit for you. And in my example, that employee, he felt that way. He just didn't want to let me down. But have those truthful conversations as leaders. I know they're tough. Take some training around crucial conversations, conflict management, closing that gap, a lot of what we can discuss, some very specific things, but just those 3 techniques, be very specific, ask good questions, ask questions to understand, and then mutually design a path forward for this particular situation. I think will help you create that environment to where conversation's able to have, and then both of you are walking away with a clear path forward. Hope this helps somebody. Go be great. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.